All right, welcome to the middle of funnel asset worksheet. And what we're going to do here is just basically design your middle of funnel asset. Now, the first question I've got here is, what is the primary resource you'll use as your middle of funnel? I recommend, as I mentioned in the lesson, an email newsletter to start out, but this is just a place to lock that in and determine what is it that you are going to use as your primary middle of funnel asset or resource to start with. Okay. And that's the first question. The second is, why would your audience want this resource? What value does it add for them? And here, I really want you to sit back and think, what am I creating that's valuable for them, right? We know why this is valuable for you. We just went through all those reasons. It helps nurture them. It helps do all these things for you and your business. But flip the script. Picture yourself as a reader. Why do they want this? How are you going to make this valuable for them? How are you going to make them actually want to digest this? Okay, so think through this and put in 5, 10, 15 bullet points of reasons or ways that you are going to make this a valuable asset, not just for you, but for them. Okay. And then think through, how often are you going to share this? Like, what is the cadence that you are going to send this out? I recommend weekly. I tend to think that daily is both a very heavy lift from a work standpoint, and a lot of people don't want to be communicated with daily. Weekly tends to be fairly standard, and it keeps you on top of people's radar frequently enough that you can increase the chances of serendipity and you're top of mind when they have those problems and those pains. And it gives you enough opportunities to speak to the different problems and pains that they have or the mistakes that they're making. So weekly is a good cadence. Monthly, if you're not able to get an email newsletter or an asset out there on a weekly basis, then go to monthly, right? That is better than doing this infrequently. So pick the cadence that you want here. I think quarterly is spaced out too far, but as a very, very bare minimum, I guess it's something. But what's the cadence that you're going to use? And then think through, how long is that going to take you? I know that I can get a newsletter done in less than an hour. Okay. I want you to think through, how long is this asset actually going to take me? Because when you start out, it might take longer. When I started with YouTube, it took me an hour and a half to do a 10-minute video. Now I can get those out in 20, 25 minutes. But think through, how long is this asset going to take you realistically each time period that you're going to do it? So if you chose weekly, how long is that going to take you each week to get this out? Then the next question I have closely tied to that is, have you blocked the time that you need to create this resource each time period? This is something I want you to do to make sure that you've got your newsletter or your video or your podcast going out on a consistent basis. Go in and time block the amount of time that you think it's going to take you to create that. And then as you get going, feel free to adjust that. If it's taking you longer than you expected, update that time block. If it's taking less time than you thought, then go ahead and shorten that time block. But make sure that you have that time block on there. I still have that on mine. Okay. Make sure you've got the time on there so that you can be consistent with this thing. You don't want to fall into getting 3 or 4 or 5 out and then not getting them out anymore. Okay. Now, before you get started, I recommend getting like 10, maybe even more subjects or topics that you're going to create content around dialed in before you get started. Okay. Like, have these lined up, because you don't want to be scrambling within that time block that you have and spend the first 20 minutes of an hour time block trying to figure out, what the hell am I going to write about? What the hell am I going to talk about? What the hell am I going to, record about? Okay. So get these lined up and then stay ahead of the curve by 5, by 10. You'll find it reduces the stress significantly when you've got a buffer of content or a buffer of ideas already lined up and ready to go. And I put here, consider using GPT to brainstorm some ideas and do more than just a sentence here. If you write just a sentence, it's going to be really easy to say, oh, okay, these are topics I'll write about. And then when you sit down and actually write about it, what's your point? How are you going to frame that? So write the topic, write a quick summary of what that is or what your angle is going to be, and then move on to the next and just get 10 of those lined up. And then the last thing here is, what is the CTA that you'll use to sign off each time you share this resource? Okay. I'll give you a few examples in the lesson. Feel free to just steal those or go ahead and make your own, but get that dialed in and make this easy too. Like, just get one CTA that you're going to use for the first 5 and get that plugged in. And then when you make the change, just make the change systematically and test it for a little while, see how it does, then make another tweak and then make another tweak. I would recommend not trying to write a new CTA every single time that you do this. I would, put it in there, get it dialed in, test it, see what it does, make a tweak, and then continue to change it. So this is, I hope, enough to get you started, to get you really thinking, get your middle of funnel asset actually designed, And then let's get this dialed in and go ahead and write a few of them, right? Like before you launch your first newsletter, I recommend you writing 3, get 3, and then you've got at least a couple weeks as a buffer each time. It'll help, anxiety. It'll help with the thought process. It'll help if your schedule goes to hell in a handbasket, and then maintain that time block as much as possible. So go ahead and get this fired up, and we will move on to the bottom of funnel next. Adios.